Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. We may not be the greatest in the world, but we're still going to talk Muhammad Ali. Welcome to the Mark and Macy Show. This is edition number 27. Macy, how you doing tonight?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing just fine, and it's really odd. It's, of course, sad that Muhammad Ali passed last weekend. Of course, that's most important. But as it pertains to our show, it's really interesting that, of course, one of the big centerpiece topics early on, this was like our first or second show. Of course, you used to line up in front of the Muhammad Ali picture, the famous shot of him standing over Sonny Liston. And we had this long conversation about what that meant to you. And because of it, what Muhammad Ali meant to you and the overall kind of theme of that picture and how it kind of placed in your life and inspired you. And that's just kind of strange that here we are a few months later and Muhammad Ali passed at the age of 74.
Yeah, I guess I should have thought that one through and sat in front of that poster tonight, but I wasn't thinking. I was very devastated to hear throughout the week that he was, his conditioning was quickly going downhill, and then his family was called to his bedside. But it was so interesting to see all the coverage on Muhammad Ali and the things that people had to say, and athletes, celebrities, normal people on the streets. I think ESPN did a really great job of covering it. I woke up Saturday morning and probably watched it for 3 or 4 hours at least. So it was just really, really interesting to see everyone's take and even as just a conversation out in the general world, what people had to say. Some people loved him, some people hated him. So, it's very sad. What kind of, I don't want to say sucks for me is I have that picture as my background on my phone, got it hanging on my wall, got it on a t-shirt, and now I feel like everyone's going to have it. Whereas before it was something that was a little more special to me. And I don't want to look like I just got it or I just put that as my background or I just hung it up on my wall. But, I know deep down in my heart the real story behind it. But it was, it's sad, but at the same time, everything went really smoothly and really nicely. And I'm interested to see how tomorrow goes when they have the services for him.
Yeah, it's very sad. Still, it's a time to celebrate his life, his legacy, what he meant to the world of boxing, of sports, and way beyond that. Somebody asked me today if I could think of anybody in sports who has meant that much to society. And I said, no, I can't think of anybody. If you talk about, let's say, in the last 30 years, Michael Jordan, there's nothing wrong with the way Jordan has approached his life and his career, but it seems very self-indulgent, self-centered, all about making money, being the greatest player. And there's nothing wrong with that. But Ali just completely transcends sports and certainly boxing. And there's so many different layers and levels to his career. If you go all the way back, just let's start with just boxing and start with sports. He's arguably the greatest fighter of all time. Certainly the average person on the street, if you pull them aside and ask who the greatest boxer of all time is, they're going to say Muhammad Ali. I don't know that he is. I have no idea if he's not. I've heard boxing experts who really know boxing that say he's not. He's one of the 5 or 10 greatest, but if you technically look at his career and his ability in the ring, maybe he's not the greatest. But yes, in terms of persona and everything he did and the championships he won, he's considered the greatest. Okay, beyond that, you know what's amazing about him, and again, I'm not even going to jump into the social aspect of this yet, but that he started, okay, he won an Olympic gold medal, I believe, in 1964. The Liston picture that you have, it might have been 1960. It might have been the previous Olympics. The Liston picture that you have, I believe, is 64, 65. And so sports on television was relatively new at that point. It baseball and football especially, and boxing was actually a lot more popular then than it is now overall. It had been on the airwaves for 10 or 15 years, but the personality aspect was pretty much non-existent. They showed games, and he was really the first one that was really outspoken out there, that used the media to his advantage, that was arrogant, showed a personality, and for the first time, we were able to see here's a guy who's amazing at what he does, but he also has this just dynamic personality. And he was really the first one that showed us that.
Yeah, so actually, I have to say, throughout all of this, one of the most interesting things I saw, I think it was on Twitter, someone said, what if Muhammad Ali was who he was in today's day and age, rather than back, so many years ago? I think he would be very interesting with the whole going to war and decides, hey, I'm not going to do this for my country. I know we don't do that so much anymore, but someone to say, I'm too great. I'm the greatest to go over there and fight. The way he acts, if he had an interview like that today, and the way that he spoke all the time, think about his Twitter account if he really had access like that or a platform like that instead of just one news source. I think it would have been really, really interesting to see how people would perceive him. And I don't know if he would come off as necessarily the greatest. I think people would take him differently and have a different aspect of who Muhammad Ali is.
I kind of think, Macy, he would have less of an impact just because I think everybody has less of an impact. So if you go through the arts, especially because that's what moves us as a nation, if you look at sports and music, the great icons back then had a larger audience. So, for example, a guy like Elvis burst onto the scene. When he was on TV, everybody watched him because they had no other options. Like, it's amazing to see. I was doing a project at ESPN a few weeks ago for a presentation where we were talking about television ratings, and I was going through the decades in regards to the largest audience for television ratings. So imagine this. When Elvis came on, he had a 92 rating one time on television. That means like everybody in the country is watching him. And it was the same thing with Muhammad Ali. There's just so much going on that I don't think anybody can be that big of a star anymore. I still think he would obviously, we'd actually have more avenues to find him interesting, I think, because he could be out there every day. We see all the clips and we see them all butted up against each other, and it kind of seems like he was out there all the time. But this probably happened like once or twice a year that he was out there and had a platform where he could just be unfiltered. So from that standpoint, I totally agree with you. I just think he would catch less attention because we have all these other things in our lives today from the media standpoint.
For sure. I totally agree with you. I just, so many people were saying so many great things, and I didn't really think I would see anything bad about Ali. And I don't think that was a bad thing for someone to say, but it really, really caught my mind. And I found myself constantly thinking about who would Ali be in today's day and age if he was in his prime right now? Who or what would he be? And maybe, some of these guys nowadays would have knocked him out and he wouldn't have been anything. He wouldn't have been the greatest.
Oh, so you're talking about from a boxing standpoint too?
All the standpoints. There's
yeah.
so many. There's so many different ways.
Well, that's always
when you have your right time to shine, it's your time to shine, and that was his time.
Well, and that's always a great discussion when you try to compare generations and how good they would be on the field. That's or the playing surface. That's not done readily in boxing. We talk about the team sports, and could the 66 Packers take on the 2012 Seahawks and beat them, and we weigh that. And in the other sports, it's hard to imagine a team from 50 or 60 years ago playing a team now because of the speed difference and the size and the strength always increasing. But on the boxing level, yeah, if that's the way it's played out, and we all agree that today's athletes are the best athletically, then it would be interesting to see, and it's hard to imagine that he would be as good, even though he dominated his day. So then he doesn't become the greatest. So I don't know if he's the 5th best out there, or the 10th best, but I kind of cut those guys slack way back then because, for one thing, they just didn't have the training or the nutrition or anything of an advantage. I'm taking us off topic, but I was watching these Super Bowl documentaries on the NFL Network the other day, and it was amazing. And I think of this stuff happening like in the 40s and 50s, but this was like the 1973 Dolphins. They were the best team in the NFL. They won the Super Bowl. These guys were talking about having jobs on the off season. Like, one was an insurance salesman, one was doing this, one was loading boxes in a truck. And it's like, yeah, you just can't compare that because those guys were at such a disadvantage in terms of trying to stay in shape and just the technology wasn't anything close to what it is now to stay in shape. So would he have been the greatest boxer? Wow. I have no idea.
It's just interesting, and it's something you think about, and you'll probably continue to think about, because it's something you don't have straight facts to compare it. You don't have the two things to say, this guy would beat this guy. So it's interesting, but
Yeah,
it's
somebody who's
sad,
doing this.
but we'll see.
Yeah, it is very sad. And it's very sad because 74 in this day and age is a fairly short life. There was a time in which that was a long life, but we've gotten to a point where 74 is a short life. But even sadder that for the last 30 some years, something close to that, he hasn't been able to have his full capacity because of his Parkinson's disease. Somebody brings up a Tyson Ali fight. That would be classic, of course, because Ali was the showman. He was a quick guy, a puncher, and a classic boxer who really knew how to box. I've heard Muhammad Ali make the comment that he would never win a street fight because he couldn't really fight. But in the ring, when you have rules and you put gloves on, he was the greatest. So Tyson was kind of like a bully. So that's the classic matchup when you got the puncher versus the guy that has technique, and that's Ali.
Yeah, when I was learning about all this stuff and hearing all the cool things about Ali, I think it was on ESPN. They said that his starting really fighted at when he was 6 years old because someone stole his bike. I mean, imagine if someone didn't steal his bike that day. Of course, maybe that's the story that goes along with, hey, here's how I made it to here. But just think, if someone didn't steal his bike or someone didn't bully him, maybe he never would have become what he was.
No, that's a great point. And usually when you go through the bios of great people who have accomplished a lot, there's at least one, there's usually several, but one of those moments early on that, oh, if that's really strange, and if that wouldn't have happened, that kind of set that person in motion to accomplish great things. Very, very true. And then from the aspect of, I know that at the end of last century that ESPN released a documentary called Sports Century, and they were rating the top 50 athletes of the century. And I believe Ali was number one. I know that they made a big deal of the top three being Ali, Jordan, and Ruth. We talked about Michael Jordan. I don't really think he changed the game. I just think he was just so great at it, and that's his legacy. And from a branding standpoint, marketing standpoint, he exploded sports from that standpoint. But in terms of social causes, really didn't touch upon that, was kind of in it for himself. And again, I don't have a huge issue with that. Babe Ruth, of course, it's difficult to relate to 1925. The thing that he did was baseball is the most important sport in American history. Maybe it's not the most popular right this second, but over the course of American history, it's the most popular and important sport. And Babe Ruth just popularized it, and he changed baseball and the way it was played. Guys used to hit 10 home runs and win the home run title before Babe Ruth came along and changed the sport. But nobody has just transcended social barriers, racial barriers than Muhammad Ali. You bring up his protest against fighting in the Vietnam War. This was at a point where if you got drafted, you went, and there was always a draft going on. And if your number came up, you went and served your country. And he didn't believe it on the stance of his spiritual beliefs, and also his beliefs that race in this country was not treated fairly. Therefore, why should I represent a country who's not treating me fairly as a black man? So he stood on his values.
Yeah, and I mean, still to this day, it's race. It's interesting that race in sports, and it still seems to be a thing this day. And then like we're going to talk about OJ later too. But again, race and sports, another interesting topic of where that comes in. So it's just like so interesting how he kind of, I don't want to say paved the way, but what might have happened in sports if he didn't, stand up for his rights and what he felt he deserved and what he started for everyone else.
I hate to continue to plug my employer, but I think you brought them up first. So also on ESPN today, because I was kind of glued to the coverage, is that two of the anchors were naming their game changers. So you can interpret that any way you want. Game changers of all time, and they both put Ali in the second spot to Jackie Robinson. So there were black boxers before Ali. So from a race standpoint, he didn't break through. He very much extended and exploded the opportunities for black boxers, African American boxers. But of course, Jackie Robinson being the first, and baseball being the most important and popular sport at the time, and over the course of American history, that debate could go on forever as well. So,
I do have to say actually about since we're talking about things ESPN has been putting out. Not too long ago, they did a short story on how and why and the meaning behind the "We Are Penn State." And that, again, goes back to race, about Penn State going to play Miami, and Miami saying, we don't accept that. So, and Penn State said, we play all. We are Penn State. We play everybody. And Penn State, or ESPN, really, really did a great piece about Penn State, about the race. And actually, my class gift when I graduated was a big "We Are" statue, and kind of how they made that statue and the way that it's, made out of mirror, or I don't even know if it's I guess it's like a steel, but it's all reflective. You can see from every angle, you can see everything. It's a really, really cool piece. So for ESPN to put out a story like that, it was really chilling. It was one of those short films, but I highly recommend it for everyone to check out.
Yeah, if you look at the history of sports in this country and go specifically to the mid to late 60s, you see a lot of stories like that are very interesting. I know Jim Brown, he played at Syracuse, maybe the greatest football player of all time. And there was a controversy over him playing in the South because Syracuse was just playing the Penn States of the world, playing northern teams. And then Syracuse made it to a bowl game. They had to go to the Cotton Bowl and the Sugar Bowl, two of his years, and he was the only black football player initially on his team. I think by the time he became a senior, there were others, and it really, the influx of black players in college football really exploded in just a few years. But for a period of time, there were just one or two per team, and there was a huge controversy over him coming to the South, playing on the Syracuse football team, and playing in the South in a bowl game. And if he would not have been as good as he was, they probably would have said, you need to leave that guy home. And that's what it would have been. But because he was as good as he was and a Heisman candidate, money talks, popularity talks. And it's unfortunate sometimes that has to be the thing to push the needle.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's something that shouldn't ever have been a thing.
Yeah.
I don't see it ever being a reason. I don't care if you're purple, yellow, white, black, blue, orange, everyone's the same. We're all human beings. And the same goes for even, any profession that you have. There's bad people in this world. There's good people in this world. It doesn't matter what you do, what you look like, whatever. We're humans. We're humans. And, it's the decisions you make, and that's what makes you. So it's sad to see that, that's what people had to deal with. But to see where we are and how far we've moved in sports, and the power that teams have, maybe because of the colors of their team or the people who are on their teams, I think is a really great thing to say we've come this far from that.
Well said. For you people out there that love sci-fi, check out A Twilight Zone, where I know I'm completely going into the Twilight Zone, you think, with this one. But there's an episode where they're at war, and this particular command leader, whatever his rank, he hates the nationality that they're fighting. It's either, I think it's during the Korean War, but there's some kind of Twilight Zone effect. Something happens and he wakes up the next day and he's one of them, and he's suddenly on the other side. It's interesting. Makes you think.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It really is, because what if that were you? What if you were in their shoes?
Yep.
It's what you're born into. You can't change that.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So we just went through in the last week a milestone event with Muhammad Ali passing, and 22 years ago, another one of those times. If you were around and maybe not, guess more than crawling at the time, but if you were around in 1994, you knew what you were doing when the O.J. Simpson situation exploded and the Bronco was traveling down the interstate in Southern California during the NBA Finals, and it was crazy. There's a documentary that's being released by ABC and ESPN that I believe hits the air on Saturday. I spoke with somebody today who's already seen the first four episodes, but they say it's amazing. And I'm not surprised because those efforts typically are. So, is that something that you're going to find interesting?
Oh, definitely. So, being born in 91, I was a little too young to really understand the OJ case and I guess really, like you said, I didn't know where I was. uh, so when the first series came out on FX, the OJ versus the People, I was hooked because I've heard about the Bronco, I've heard about the glove, I've heard, all the big things that you really know about the OJ case. I've heard about that. But I didn't know the full details of the case and or even just the whole story, I guess, of the whole OJ thing because I'm young. So, to watch that, I was really, really hooked. And once it ended, I felt like I didn't have enough. I wanted more. I wanted to see more. I wanted to find out more about OJ Simpson and what happened. And I wish I could be a fly on the wall for the whole thing. So when I saw that ESPN was putting out this mini series, I was beyond thrilled to see that. But what I heard were the first two episodes were like really good from people who have already seen them, and the second two are basically the OJ FX, like OJ versus the People. So I don't know if they're just like replaying that court case and the details of what happened in court. I'm not really sure. That's just what I heard. And then I think there's only 5 episodes, right?
Yes.
Something like that. But I've heard great things about it. I can't wait. Unfortunately, I won't be home Saturday night to watch it, so I have already got my DVR set. But I can't wait.
Yeah. OJ was huge right about the same time as at least the end of the run of Muhammad Ali. So right about the time that I could first remember anything about sports, watch anything, I really didn't get to see OJ Simpson play football, and especially in his prime. But I do remember a Thanksgiving when I didn't know anything about football, didn't watch football. I was very, very small. And we were visiting somebody else's house, and I just remember people getting excited watching football. And this guy told me, he said, that's the greatest football player in the NFL. And it was OJ Simpson. And yeah, I missed all that, but people forget because that's now his legacy is that situation. And I think we can safely say what he did at this point. It's pretty cut and dry, I believe. And but he was. We talk about Ali being popular. I would say within a sports context that OJ was just as popular. Not far reaching socially, but within sports, he was the first guy, certainly the first African American who was all over the map with advertising and the sales pitch, and good looking guy and just an amazing football player. And he was a smooth talker and he had it all, and people loved him. And that's why it was such a shock to people because he was still broadcasting. He was still very prominent as an NFL announcer. And then all of a sudden, it's like there's this crazy guy going down the highway in this runaway Bronco, and what's going on and what's this all about? And then we heard the audio tapes of what he was, the conversations in the car, and it was wow. It was a shocking story.
Yeah, I think all of it is shocking. It's bizarre. Just to watch the whole thing to see how it all played out. Now he's in jail again, for trying to steal back his Heisman Trophy and other sports stuff. Just everything about OJ is weird. And when I was watching that show, obviously I knew what was going to happen. I already knew what the results would be. But you sat there watching the show, at least I did, and you wanted to say he's not guilty. But then it was just like, he's guilty, but then you say he's not guilty. They played it so well, at least in this television series of guilty versus not guilty. You really felt you were jumping back and forth between the sides. So when he got off, was I surprised? No, because I knew he was going to get off. But if I was just watching that and never knew about the case, would I be surprised? Absolutely. But at the same time, to see all the stuff he's continued to do after, it just makes you think like he's just crawling back to where he should have been in the first place.
Absolutely.
So, I don't know. The whole thing is interesting, and I hope this documentary or miniseries is a little bit different from the TV show, because I want to learn something new, or maybe I don't know. I'm really interested to see it. I think the OJ case is so interesting, and I still feel like I haven't gotten an answer. Like, okay, they said he didn't do it, but everyone says he did do it, so you don't know who or what to believe. And I just read yesterday that a close friend of his or someone said that they think one day soon he'll actually admit that he did it. And I can't even imagine what the reaction would be, or what would even happen if one day he did finally admit to doing that.
I know I've made up my mind based on the evidence. And believe me, Macy, I was a guy that I wasn't like this crazy O.J. Simpson fan, and it had been 16 years since he retired. So I had no connection. Again, I didn't watch him play, had no connection to him playing, but I just thought I'm a football fan and historian. I just thought he was amazing. And he just had a vibrant personality and just had an energy about him. I just liked him. And then once all this happened, I made every excuse for the guy for weeks and weeks and weeks. I did everything I possibly could to try to justify that the evidence wasn't adding up. But I think it's pretty undeniable at this point. So Danny Rose has asked us, why is OJ still enshrined in the NFL Hall of Fame? The one thing I can say is that we know that in the Baseball Hall of Fame that there's a clause about character and integrity and conduct. I don't know that that is also stated in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Of course, his football exploits are without a doubt worthy of the Hall of Fame, but all of that happened, and he's still enshrined in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and then someone else over here said that the world doesn't need celebrities, the world needs role models in hard work to dedicate to give back to the world, which I agree with. And they also said that celebrities are like leeches in our life, which again, going back to Ali, OJ Simpson, imagine if Ali, like we said, was on today's social media platform, if he was on ESPN 24/7. We might look at him negatively and look at him like a leech instead of someone who's just doing all these great things. Another guy, OJ Simpson. People loved OJ, so they stuck to him. He stuck to them, and people liked him, and he won. Just for that certain reason. I think these celebrities do try to win you over, more than just being an athlete, but as their personalities. And someone, Michael Jordan, another person who we were discussing too. But I think a lot of celebrities do give back. I do get a little upset when I see athletes complain about their contracts not being enough, or even, just actors and actresses not making enough money. Most of them are making more money than I'll ever see in my lifetime. And they're doing somewhat easy jobs where they have it pretty easy. There should be people like nurses and firefighters and police officers who are making that big money, who are going out and saving people every day, not people who are just entertaining people.
Absolutely. There's no doubt that what they do is entertainment. It's not necessary. There could be an argument made that we do need some kind of release. We need to be entertained in some fashion. Do we need other people entertaining us? No. 150 years ago, people entertained themselves out by the campfire. But anyway, so this is a recent phenomenon in human history, and it's mostly because of recordings and because of television, movies, because we can record somebody performing and mass audiences can see it. So it's only been in the last 50 or 60 or 70 years that we've had this phenomena of celebrity to that magnitude. Maybe I'm nitpicking a little bit with the whole role model or role model or versus celebrity, in that somebody can be a role model, a true, legitimate, positive role model, and a celebrity, both, of course. And if they're going to reach a mass audience, then they're automatically a celebrity. That doesn't make them a bad person. So being a celebrity is not a bad thing. You can, obviously, that can be used for good, because you can influence more people.
Yes, but I agree that every celebrity is somewhat of a role model, but I think nowadays, unfortunately, with social media and the news being on 24/7, and you're constantly in every spotlight, someone's going to find something wrong with somebody, no matter what, to bring them down. So yeah, you might think JJ Watt. I think he's a great guy. He's a role model. I would tag him as a role model, but I'm sure there's people out there who try to bring him down every day because who knows, he did something that wasn't right for them. So it's a little unfortunate that I think our social media takes away from people and who they could be. You could put out one bad tweet, and that could ruin your role modeling abilities. So it's a shame, but it's our world that we live in.
Yeah, it takes a long time to build up a good reputation. It only takes a matter of seconds to tear it down, maybe forever. All right. NBA Finals last night. I am watching the NBA Finals mostly because my son's watching the NBA Finals. I've watched most of it, and I'm a little intrigued after last night's result that Cleveland may have a chance. I still don't see them winning, but they might have a shot. I'm guessing, Macy, that you're not watching the NBA championship.
Yeah, I watch it on Twitter because it's much more entertaining. I love to read people's tweets, and this is for any sporting event, but something that's such a big platform and such a big thing. I love to read Twitter to see the pictures people put out. Of course, there's instant GIFs and videos and photoshops of crying Jordans, crying LeBrons. I love it. I love it in that sense. Have I dedicated the time to sit and watch a full game yet? No, I have not. Am I ashamed of it? No, I'm not.
I thought Mom there told us that it's a GIF.
Yeah, I refuse to call it a GIF. It's a GIF.
Okay, I thought so. It's a GIF. GM.
Yeah, it's a GIF, but it's been interesting. I think it's what we've expected so far.
So where do we stand on dabbing at this point? That's pretty passé. It's outdated, right? Has that run its course, period?
Yes, and do you want to know why? Because my grandparents do it.
Yeah, that would.
So once the grandparents dab, it's old school.
Yeah, it's pretty old school. It's old school. So this came and went for me, and I've never dabbed in my life. So I'm going to be able to hold to that for the rest of my life and say, you know what, I've never done.
That's almost Twitter bio worthy that you've never dabbed before. No, it was interesting today. We were actually out celebrating my grandfather's birthday, and ESPN was doing a story about how Cam Newton says he's done dabbing and he's not doing it anymore. And it caught my grandmother's eye because all the guys, was like Trey Wingo and all these guys started dabbing. And she was like, look. And I'm like, oh, man. Because she does it now. So for that to catch her attention, I was very impressed, actually. But I'm glad to see it go. Really, honestly, I'm glad that it's done. I know I'm still going to see it out in the world, but if it will stop on the football field, great. But the only thing that's worse than that means there's something new coming. So we're going to see something new this season, something else to add to the list, to add to the online jumble of all of these things and whatever it is. So it will be interesting to see what's next and if we're able to do it.
Well, that's why if there's a new thing, it needs to be too difficult for somebody that age to do it.
Yeah, I'm not even trying to do it. So I hope it's too hard for me.
Well, you've dabbed, right? So don't
No,
say that you're
that's
definitely
easy
not going to do
though.
this.
Yes, but dabbing is easy.
Well, you don't know what the next thing's going to be. So don't say that you're definitely not going to do it. You don't know. You
Yeah,
might
but
love it.
remember the whole whip and nay nay thing? Like,
Yeah.
I can't do that. I've tried and failed miserably, so they got me there.
That's something else that I've never tried. I'm sure I couldn't do it. All right. We're the Mark and Macy Show. This is our 27th week. Join us on Twitter at Mark and Macy Show. Also on YouTube, where you can look at our backlog of episodes there, 26 of them, and some really great guests in previous weeks, like Pat Muldowney, Phil Murphy, Sonoris Moss. So if you have any guests, now see, here's the condition. If you have a great guest for us to bring on anybody, then you also have to know them, because you've got to deliver them to us for us to interview them.
Yeah, I think it's a good time of year, a little bit of downtime. Maybe we can bring in some cool guests and see what they have to say and invite them on the Mark and Macy Show.
And Macy, I've said this before, but I know that you could bring on some great guests. All you have to do is look at your Twitter followers. There's a guest list right there, ready made.
Hey, I'm trying. You know, I can't invite them all at one time.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and I'll work on somebody. Usually the people that I think of, the people that I talk to, are such college football like centric focused people. I don't know that they would really be the type of people we'd mix it up with on here. You have any idea who Phil Steele is? Does that?
Yes, only because you've retweeted him.
I doubt if I've ever
Maybe
retweeted.
I've know the name.
Phil Steele writes a college football and I think an NFL magazine. Like back in the day, it was always paper, but I'm sure he's got electronic copies. And he's big. Like he's on ESPN. They have him on every week. He gives his predictions. He's like kind of like, he's not like strictly a handicapper, but in a sense he is. He's been around a long time. And he followed me maybe a couple months ago. So I followed him. And so then I'm like, well, Phil Steele follows me. I'm going to have him on my show. And so Tuesday, bam, it's going to be on Mark Rogers TV.
That's awesome. Tell him to jump over to Thursday too. Make it a
We'll bring him on.
deal. No, I think it's summertime. We need to, you know, spice it up a little bit and bring some fun people on here.
Some fun people. That would be good.
Fun people.
Fun is good. All right. Mark and Macy Show every Thursday night. We come your way on Blab. How long we're going to be coming your way on Blab, we'll see. If Blab is good to us, we may continue on Blab. If we can find another platform for our show, we might have to go ahead and do that. So you can find all of our shows, again, maybe easier than going on YouTube, because it's not Mark and Macy, because I screwed up and I don't know if that's fixable. Go to markandmacyshow.webs.com. Find all our shows right there. YouTube, right at the top. Bam. You've got all our shows. Plus, if you don't want to sit through an entire show and you want to get a feel for what we do, we've got a demo reel. Just click on that, and it's just 10 minutes of the best time you could ever spend.
10 minutes of greatness.
Oh, of greatness.
No, I'm actually, for this weekend, I'm going to my first, I don't want to say first soccer game because I've been to plenty of soccer games, but I'm going to the Copa America game. So I'm interested to see the U.S. team play. I've never seen that. So that will be exciting. I've been watching them. Their first game they lost, which was pretty poor play, but they won in Chicago on, I think it was Tuesday night. So they come to Philly on Saturday.
As soon as you started that story, Macy, I was all prepared to say, I got nothing for you. It's soccer. I can't say anything about it. this is what I will say. Here's my soccer story. That about 10 years ago at ESPN, they selected 15 or 20 people to go to a U.S. team game, like an exhibition game as they prepared for it must have been the World Cup or the Olympics. And so the game was at Foxborough. So we went up there, and I was seated with a guy that I work with who's a huge soccer guy, played soccer in college, loves the game. And he's like, Mark, I'll get you into it. And I'm like, yeah, right. You'll get me into it. And so you obviously know the end of the story is that he didn't get me into it. But while we're sitting there was a goal scored within like the first 30 seconds of the game. Somebody scored like that. And I turned to him and I said, this game's over, right? And he had to admit, he's like, yeah, it probably is. I said, this is the problem with soccer. The game's over already. It's 1-0.
Yeah, it's interesting. You can have really exciting games where it's like, you know, a 1-0, a 1-1, a 2-1, a 2-2, and then you're like, yeah. Or you can have games that are just 1-0 games that they score right off the bat, and that's it. That's all you're seeing.
The soccer hater in me, Macy, says, when you come across that exciting soccer game, I need you to text me or call me and let me know which game that was, because I need to watch that one.
I've been to a couple. I mean, they're fun. I played soccer, so I get it. You know, there's games where we'd score and you know, right in the beginning, and then you're just running around for 98 minutes or 90 minutes, and you're like, oh, well, now what? Or there's games where you're playing your hardest the entire game and you don't score until the final minutes. So you never know with soccer. It's very unpredictable.
I know. I'm being a little bit mean on soccer. I'm sorry. I respect it. I respect the athletes. They're very talented and in great condition.
They are, because I couldn't do it.
I just haven't connected with it. How are the push-ups coming?
You know what? Honestly, I hurt myself pretty bad because
Really?
I was doing 22 push-ups like every day in a row. So I've gone kind of into like a rotation. So instead of doing 22 push-ups, I'll do like 20 squats or 20 sit-ups or something like that to you know, change out instead of just doing the push-ups.
That's a good idea. Would you hurt your back? Would you hurt?
No, like in here.
You're sore.
Yeah, but like to the point where I thought I was having like a heart attack though, but it was just a muscle like in my chest.
A heart attack doing push-ups?
Yeah, it hurts. It's hard.
Good. You know that. Yeah. You worked out enough to know that's a good sore. That's
but you're not, and you should know when working out, you shouldn't do it every single day.
No, you shouldn't.
Right.
You shouldn't.
So that's why now I change it out every day.
Yeah. All right. I have a little chart on my refrigerator that I'm going to make sure I get enough water, that I get enough fruits and vegetables, that I either work out upper body, lower body. If it's a cardio day, how many miles did I walk or jog? I'm set. I'm focused.
Good.
All right. Get that summer body. Probably by November, if I ever get there. All right, Macy. Good show.
Yes, it was great.
Very nice. All right, everybody. Again, markandmacyshow.webs.com. Join us on Twitter as well, and you can find us there. All right. We will see you next time.